And this is a Fox News alert. Now, earlier this evening, the Wisconsin State Senate stripped Wisconsin's public sector unions of many of their collective bargaining rights. Now, Republican lawmakers were able to separate the portion of Governor Scott Walker's budget bill that deals with collective bargaining and pass that on its own in the absence of the state's 14 missing Democratic senators. Now, their presence is only necessary to move forward on fiscal matters, and tonight's events come after weeks of union protests aimed at killing this part of the measure. And despite this setback, Wisconsin's Democratic Senate Minority Leader is now vowing to fight on. Now, Coulter will be here in just a moment with reaction to that. But first, tonight, 2 National Public Radio executives are out of a job. What a shame. Now, the company's CEO, Vivian Schiller, resigned earlier today at the request of the company's board. Now, this comes in the wake of an explosive video released yesterday, and it shows NPR executive Ron Schiller, no relation to Vivian, making nasty remarks about his political opponents. Now, here's part of that tape.
The Republican Party is not really the Republican Party. It's been hijacked by this group that is
radical, racist, Islamophobic, Tea Party people.
And not just Islamophobic, but really xenophobic. I mean, basically, they believe in sort of white, middle America gun-toting. I mean, it's pretty scary. They're seriously racist.
Now, Schiller announced last week that he was leaving NPR for another job, but in light of this tape, NPR made the resignation effective immediately. Now, as for Vivian Schiller, this is her second major scandal in just a matter of months. You'll remember how gracefully she handled the first, NPR's decision to fire my colleague, Juan Williams.
His feelings that he expressed on Fox News are really between him and his, psychiatrist or his publicist, or take your pick. But it is not compatible with a news analyst with the role of a news analyst on NPR's air.
All right, good riddance to her. Now the question is whether the personnel changes at NPR will be enough to save its federal funding. And joining me now with reaction, best-selling author, hugely a tremendous following on Twitter, and a columnist, the one and only Coulter. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good to be here.
I told everybody you were going to get a new hairdo. That didn't happen.
Yeah, I got my hair cut.
Oh, it looks nice.
Because someone on Twitter said she wanted to be me, except if she were me, she'd get her hair cut. And I said, that's why you can't be me. But I did get my hair cut.
All right. Now, why don't we start with Wisconsin, because that's a breaking news now.
Huge.
Huge victory. And guess what? They didn't need the 14 Democratic hideouts, cowards, after all.
Huge, but I'm really glad this came up. Because this has been driving me crazy. Where has Scott Walker been? On a network that admittedly has 20 viewers, they're covering what's happening in Wisconsin as if it's the 9/11 attack. I haven't seen Scott Walker on TV for 2 weeks now. If he were Chris Christie, he'd be on TV every night. His lieutenant governor would be on TV. I don't even know the lieutenant governor's name.
The lieutenant governor's been here. The governor's
not
been
last
here,
night.
and on radio.
Really, not last night, because for 4 hours on MSNBC, this is all they talked about Wisconsin last night.
But who cares? Nobody cares.
The point is, this is a battle for the nation. People don't understand what's going on. When it takes me 10 minutes today for my column I wrote about Wisconsin today, among the contracts I mentioned was one for the bus drivers that led to a bus driver in Madison 2 years ago earning $159,000, more than $100,000 of that in overtime. There were 6 bus drivers who made more than $100,000. There are enough egregious...
How many hours was he driving that bus?
And by the way, the response of the guy who oversees the bus drivers was, well, it's in the contracts. Every American ought to know about every one of those outrages. Do you know, if you work for the state of Wisconsin, if you take a single phone call when you are not at work, you get to bill for a half an hour of overtime. These are insane contracts because there is no management with government. It's another politician trying to buy your vote. There's no, capitalist overseer trying to squeeze more work out of people for less money. You can't have you can't have unions for government workers, which FDR said, which George Meany said. Yep. And why aren't the Wisconsin Republicans pushing this? I love them, but this is tough love. You have fallen down on the job, and they're losing the battle, as we saw from the Rasmussen poll yesterday. I'm glad they came up with this today, and I do want to ask why it took them 3 weeks to figure this out.
All right, that's a good question. Next, let's move on to NPR.
Yes.
Okay, the Tea Party group, radical, racist, Islamophobic, and he goes on and on. White, middle America, gun-toting, it's scary. They're seriously racist. Wait a minute, didn't this sound like Obama saying?
I was going to
they cling to guns and religion.
I was going to say all this stuff about the Tea Partiers, the Americans, the evangelicals, that's like, a typical day at the White House. What no one really seems to be talking about, but you started the show with, was these guys who came in the fantastic James O'Keefe video and said they were part of the Muslim Brotherhood here in America. So wait a second. NPR was going to take $5 million from the Muslim Brotherhood, a terrorist organization. What if they were sitting down with al-Qaeda? I think we need the FBI to investigate NPR and their agreement to take $5 million from a terrorist organization operating in America.
We said, and that's why. Well, let me go to this one tape where this was Vivian, I believe, or no, I'm sorry, an NPR executive. They actually used to describe themselves as National Palestinian Radio. Let's roll this tape.
I don't actually find it in NPR. What exactly? The Zionist or pro-Israel, even among funders. Nobody really? No. Pro-Israel. I mean, it's there in those who own newspapers, obviously. But no one owns NPR. So I don't find it.
All right, that was the Ron Schiller one. I mean, obviously, they're in the pro-Zionist view that own the newspapers, obviously, playing into a false narrative, caricature, and frankly, anti-Semitic view.
And, well, of course it's anti-Semitic. He's sitting with what he thinks are members of the Muslim Brotherhood in America.
Yeah.
No, I think this is Peter King still doing his investigations? Because they ought to throw this into it. NPR is sitting down, about to accept $5 million from the Muslim Brotherhood.
All right, now,
and by the way, James O'Keefe has done more to destroy liberalism in America than any of the Wisconsin Republicans.
Well, by the way, another tape apparently is coming out tomorrow.
No, well,
this is not the only one.
Good for O'Keefe.
Well, good for O'Keefe.
And I bet you O'Keefe would not have accepted a phone call from a fake David Koch. Whomever did this cannot work for Republicans anymore. You know, I speak to the Harvard Republicans every couple of years.
I think
huge group. If you're a Midwestern governor,
you're being a little harsh.
If you're a Midwestern governor taking on the biggest fight in our country's lifetime right now, the spending is through the roof. Chris Christie wouldn't have appeared once on Chris Wallace's show and then left.
With Chris Christie
because he's the only one who's fighting the public unions properly.
No, he's not the only one. John Kasich is doing it in Ohio. Scott Walker, give him credit.
As of yesterday, he was losing.
Well, you're looking at one poll. Let's
one poll, two polls from Rasmussen.
Wait a minute, but here's the bottom line.
Republicans need to fight this battle publicly.
He is doing what we want conservatives to do. Every conservative governor that has taken on spending the unions, in the end, wins the public opinion battle. This war's not over. It's only just begun, and you want him on TV every night.
Every night. I want him or one of his people on TV,
doesn't go on TV
talking about the outrages of the union contracts for government workers, distinguishing them from steel workers who should have unions, unlike government workers
on health care. Why didn't New Jersey join on health care? Where's Chris Christie on guns? Why did Chris Christie support Christine O'Donnell's opponent?
No, we are not having
Castle?
this discussion again. We are discussing. No, I do. But right now, I want to have the discussion of Republicans not understanding that they are in a war with Democrats. This is a war for the country. And by the way, the guy who cut my hair today said, oh, they're all the same, they're all the same. They are not all the same. The Democrats are defending this nonsense in a contract that allows a bus driver to make $159,000 1 year.
Is Chris Christie the only guy you think could run and win as president?
We are not discussing Chris Christie tonight.
I asked you the question, so we're discussing it.
2 weeks ago, I recommended Scott Walker as a potential vice presidential candidate for him. Not anymore. You don't hire people who will put you on the phone with a fake David Koch and then run for president.
You're making the mountain out of a molehill here.
And the other way the Republicans are different from the Democrats to get back to NPR here is we should not be discussing whether NPR is good and whether the programming is helpful. Where in the Constitution does it say the United States Congress can fund things to help culture and education? It's unconstitutional. Cut spending on this nonsense.
Coulter, your haircut looks wonderful.
Thank you.
Great to see you.